Good morning. Going to read the Milagro Beanfield War, at least an excerpt from it. It stands on its own. It's a good story just by itself. The 3 or 4 pages that are here, but the book itself is kind of it's a cult classic. It was made into a movie. It's a book first. There are 3 books in the series. It's set in New Mexico, and it's a fight over land. Basically, the rich, probably Anglos, versus the brown, poor people who work the fields. And it's a magical realist narrative about their fights that are tragic and funny and all of the above. The particular piece that I'm going to be reading, a guy loses his arm, and the stories that come from the arm are absolutely hilarious. I think you'll find them funny too. So let's start. The normal way to lose an arm, leg, or whatever in Milagro was by having it mangled in a tractor sickle bars or crushed beneath a horse. The deputy sheriff, Maletin Narjano, had lost a finger when, as he was fussing with a fan belt in a truck, his kid had climbed behind the wheel and turned the motor over. Cristobal Mondragon, Joe's third youngest brother, had half his pinky bitten off when he lost hold of the nose twitch on a horse he was warming. Tranquilino Giannetti had lost one ear tip to frostbite during the same long-ago winter that the Strawberry Mesa Body Shop and Pipe Queen operator Ruby Archuleta killed a deer with her bare hands. Marvin LeBleu donated half his left thumb to a scissors jack at the body shop and Pipe Queen, and Claudio Garcia dedicated the first joint of his right hand's middle finger to that same beastly machine. Many arms, pieces of tongues, and parts of legs had been left by various Milagro residents in the near seats of their head-on collisions with cows and horses on the north-south highway. And each generation, of course, owned somebody who had lost an eye to a BB gun. But Onfrey Martinez lost his arm to butterflies. On the day it happened, all morning, I'm irrigating my field, so by lunchtime I felt real tired. I went and sat down under a tree and ate a burrito and an extra piece of cheese. Then, just as I'm dozing off, along comes a big orange butterfly and lands on my arm, on the part called the bicep, up here. I didn't move, and she sits there with her wings open. And after a minute, I notice she's putting some sticky stuff on my skin. And this sticky stuff, there's a bunch of little white bumps, which after another minute, it hits me are her eggs. Eventually, she flutters away, and I'm left with this little sticky circle on my arm full of tiny white huevos. I was curious, so I didn't brush them off. I went home, and for the next few days, I'm real careful not to move my arm, so as not to disturb those eggs. Then one morning I woke up and the eggs had hatched into little gusanos, and these little gusanos are already eating a hole in my arm. They look like maggots. It didn't hurt though, so I let them go ahead. They ate right into my arm and disappeared, and not a drop of blood came out of the hole. I guess they sucked it all up along the way. It still didn't hurt, so I'm just waiting for something to happen, being careful not to move my arm too much, of course. After a while, I noticed they're eating up all the meat under the skin of my lower arm, but still, don't ask me why, it didn't hurt. And these little gusanos are growing and getting real fat until pretty soon I didn't have any more meat in my arm down there. And then a couple of them gnawed through my bone up by the bicep up here, and my arm fell to the ground, which is when they started flying out of my arm, like out of a cornucopia. All these beautiful crimson butterflies flying all around me like hungry bats for a minute until the wind blew them up into a tree. And for just a minute, even though it was August, a little snow fell on the cottonwood trees and on those blood-red butterflies. The snow was so cold, it killed all the butterflies in a wink, and they fell from the tree onto the ground like autumn leaves. I picked up my arm, which only had the skin intact, with the rest hollowed out, thinking maybe it would make a good windsock at the Chismavi airport. But I tumbled into a ditch on the way home and lost it. This happened a long time ago, before you were born. Maybe dogs ate what was left of my arm, or perhaps something else used it to line their nests. Birds used it to line their nests. I don't know. But anyway, on this particular summer day, Barnaby Montoya walked out of reels, just as Onfrey's modded green 1953 Chevy pickup with a three-legged dog on top hiccuped to a stop at the town's lone parking meter, and with a dispirited, call it a lonely Chihuahua, the sheriff reached for his citation pad. Bitterly, he began to write, thinking as he did, so that if he ever all the cankerous stakes in people like Armada Cardova, Joe Mondragon, and Onfrey Martinez were united behind a common cause, there would be much more than all hell to pay. Onfrey's three-legged shepherd leaped to the ground as the Baron slammed the door, and with a triumphant grin riding on his face like a soaring hawk, Onfrey pulled out the driver's side windshield wiper, making it that much easier for Barnaby to slide his ticket into place. After that, staggering swiftly forward like a man about to fall flat in his face, Onfrey chugged toward the Pilar. On his way up the steps, he encountered Bud Gleason, decked out in a madre sport coat and a bow tie, coming down, and Onfrey tipped his cowboy hat good day with his invisible arm. At least, Onfrey always insisted he used his non-existent right hand to tip that hat, and it certainly looked that way because his left invisible arm never swung up from the other side. Skeptics, though, said that the hat tip was just a trick Onfrey had learned to do by wiggling his scalp. Yet at least one person in town, Joe Mondragon, claimed that he had once had his lip split in a Saturday night argument at the frontier by the invisible fist residing at the end of Onfrey's invisible arm. Still, every town, and particularly a town with a heritage of crazies like Milagro, needs some sort of boogeyman, banshee, witch, frog-eating Calefos something shaped like a dog, or abuelo with which to terrorize children during the holiday seasons, and also with which to explain many of the unexplainable things that happen year-round in the neighborhood. Of course, Pacheco's pig, in certain ways, had become just such a scapegoat, taking up some of the slack created by Abuelo's demise. But long before Pacheco's indestructible sow rose to prominence in the townsfolk's fertile imaginations, another phantom was born to roam through the Miracle Valley, wreaking all manner of curious havoc. The phantom was Onfrey's arm, Martinez's missing arm. As legend would have it, Onfrey Martinez's missing arm floated around town doing nasty deeds because it had been eaten either by butterflies or by dogs or by snakes or by coyotes. But whatever the case, it had never received a proper Christian burial. And bitter over this, the arm had sworn to plague the town for eternity in revenge. In this capacity, of course, the arm served a traditional and useful purpose. Mothers told their very young children all about Ebrezeo Onfrey. And once the child's imagination had thoroughly gasped the image of that powerful, invisible, and very evil appendage drifting through the Milagro air, searching hungrily for nasty things to do, mothers tried to extract obedience from their small fry by threatening, "You watch out, Alfredo. If you're not a good boy, El Onfrey will choke you in your bed tonight. Or eat your stew, Eloy. Or tonight, El Brezo Onfrey will open your window and steal your piggy man." Or again, "Adeletta, you better be a good girl over the holidays, or else El Brezo Onfrey will strangle Santa Claus and you won't get no presents." Occasionally, El Brezo Onfrey could be a good phantom. Thus, all during the boxing career of Armienta Cordova's son Gabriel, it was said that the Milagro Mauler's most special punches, the ones that gained for him all his victories, were usually the invisible haymakers landed by Gabriel's patron saint, El Brezo Onfrey. And teenage kids from Milagro who boxed down at Chamsville High School always winkingly attributed their victories to the fact that they had El Bronzo Onfrey in their corner. If you went into it at all, El Bronzo Onfrey actually possessed quite a diverse character. Once, as a small child, when caught by Nick Rao walking out of the general store, then the Divine Company store, with his pocket stuffed full of stolen candy bars, Joe Mondragon had automatically, instinctively squealed, "I didn't do it. I didn't know I had even had those candy bars. I was framed by El Onfrey." And when Joe or Armanta Cordova or any other men in town sneaked the national forest to set a fire, so all the men in town would have hard work at good pay for a while, they always stood around afterward with their hands in their pockets, gazing innocently up at the sky, lips pursed, carefully whistling Dixie as they declared the fire must have been set by that unconscionable rapscallion El Bronzo on fire. So you've got the real part of the missing arm, that he loses his arm, which he tells a story about. Um, and then you've got how that story blossoms into kind of this magical thing that terrorizes the town, or at least people blame everything on it. Um, so you can see how the magic is weaving in with the stories, the magic, and it makes for quite a story about a missing arm. With that, be thinking about, if you're going to write a magical realist narrative yourself, be thinking, in today's, I'm asking you, what real story would you tell? So what, like a missing arm, a sprained ankle, a time you went to the mountains, whatever. Find something real to write about, and we'll think of some tomorrow. We'll think of something magical to put in there. All right. See you later.